Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Let me get rid of this branding thing I got going on here, and let me bring on Nicole. How are you doing, Nicole?
Hey, I am good. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Awesome. Yay. Technology is awesome when it works, right?
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna just kind of let you take the lead here a little bit because I don't know anything about what's going on. I got a text, and then about 30 minutes ago, and then I started moving. So,
Right.
what have you heard so far on the whole
So
situation?
far, I've just heard that it's been overturned. I received a text as well from a friend of mine because I was not tuned into anything. And yeah, it's been overturned. And I just wanted to weigh in. I've got at 12 o'clock that I've got to jump on here in just a few
Okay.
minutes. But what I wanted to say was, and I'm putting on my futuristic hat here about what I see happening. I feel like we're now going to become more federalist in our states. So the blue states are going to get bluer, the red states are going to get redder, is what I feel like. And then we're going to start having sanctuary states for people to terminate their pregnancies, namely California, namely Illinois. I think will be two of the ones that are going to be safe havens for abortion. But it does go back to the states. And I've seen several articles here in the last few that have, it's so funny to see the left eat themselves, because when they talk about abortion and when they talk about terminating pregnancies, they tacitly admit to life. They tacitly admit that there's a baby. They tacitly admit that we're terminating a beating heart here. So it's just amazing to see how all the back and forth is going. I guess suddenly mothers are now mothers, women are women, and women can go, because ironically enough, women are becoming pregnant, right? Women do become pregnant. Right. And because apparently that was in question for a minute, right? So it's just the whole conversation around women and women's rights and what women can do, all on the heels of Title IX. I hate to muddy the issue, but then Title IX, we're having that completely be rewritten by this administration. That calls into questions women's sports and women competing and so what a crazy time this is. Such cognitive dissonance over what is true, what is not true, what we're supposed to be seeing, what we're not supposed to be seeing. It blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I haven't had a chance to look at any of this, and I know your video on this was fantastic. The whole dealing with the whole notion choose, and now it's like it whatever narrative suits their need at the moment.
Right.
If so, they just flip flop back and forth, and they have no credibility on the issue.
Nobody believes anymore, and I think people are tired of it. I mean, 6 more days of Pride Month. Okay. I'm telling you, it is so tiresome. It is so tiresome to have people define themselves just by their sexual preference. And that just seems to be where we go for the entire month of June. And it wears me out. And I think people are tired of it. And I think that's what we're seeing. People have looked at this in the entirety of this administration because no real issues are being tackled, but they're doubling down on the social issues. They're doubling down on diversity, equity, and inclusion as if that were the issue of the day and that's what we're all concerned about. And we're not. We're not. They're losing the Black vote. They're losing the Hispanic vote hand over fist. And the approval ratings are in the tank. And now I don't even know what they think that they're going to say that anybody is going to believe anymore.
100%, because they're using political footballs.
Political footballs, and let's not forget political theater with this whole January 6th thing. I'm waiting. I'm not watching it, as is most of the country. And we're supposed to see what criminal intent and a real plan as to what happened January 6th. Still waiting. And that is, to me, that's the look over here while we do this over here. You know, it's just a distraction. And I'll tell you what the wake up call is: putting gas in your car and going to the grocery store. That's the wake up call. And none of this January 6th, none of this Title IX, none of this anything else is going to distract from the fact that people are hurting. And even though we're having people telling us to calm down and just not worry about it,
right?
The Washington Post reporter, it's Gaslight Friday. Right. You and I have talked about it. It's here's what's happening, but it's not really happening. And you're lying, or you're bigoted, or you're just in the tank for the Republicans if you believe differently.
Yeah, I know you got to go. You got a hard stop at 12, but
Right.
I appreciate you coming on. And I'll as best I can, but you're the expert in this, and I think you nailed it in every video you do. Check out Right Therapist Nicole Kaufman, and she does fantastic stuff.
I appreciate you, Kyle. I appreciate you. Just wanted to jump on and weigh in. And everybody, hug your babies today. That's always my message. Hug your babies on Friday. And yay, this is a landmark day in America. I'm here for it. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you too, Nicole.
All right, take care.
God bless you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Sure.
Bye.
All right. So what I'm going to do right now, guys, this may be a very emotional thing for me, because I actually may break down here on live television, because this is an issue for me that is extremely personal to my heart. Okay, because number one, I'm adopted. Okay, that's number one, and so I have a sensitivity to that, just in and of that, for obvious reasons. Secondly, the way I look, I don't broadcast how I look, but, just look at the numbers of where Planned Parenthood puts their clinics. They put them in areas where people look similar to me, at least complexion-wise. So there's that. But also, my birthday hits the day of Roe versus Wade, the decision in 73. So I got three things. So if you have any question at all of where I stand on abortion and what I think about that, let me know. I'll clarify. I want to thank everyone who came on here. Bass Anderson, I'm going to go through these comments directly, because you guys are just awesome. You guys support us. God still lives. Yes, he does. It's Bass Anderson. Nicole, we know about her. She just showed up. She had to jump off. But we have a private group of all the people that are involved. The service right out there. And Mark, I might include you too on this, by the way. Mark Jackson's on here as well. And what we're doing behind the scenes. Because if you're interested in knowing what's going on, we're on Signal, by the way. Mark, if you're on Signal, I'll give you an invite to that. But then I shot a link out, and next thing you know, Marty called me. He's going to be on later, do a show on his channel. And then Nicole jumped on quickly because she's very busy. So thank you for coming on there as well. Sunshine, Happy Lady, great name and great news. And praise God, absolutely. And Lori WYUK, thank you as well. And hello to you. And reporting for duty, as the aforementioned Mark Jackson. Again, if you want that link, just send me an email. I'm not sure you can get contact with me, but I will send you just send me an email to Kyle@theconservativetake.com. Kyle@theconservativetake.com. I'll set you up there. Bass Anderson says here, I've been watching live on RSBN. So I haven't been watching anything. I literally got a text from one of the people within. From that point on, I just got moving. So what I want to do here is go through these comments, and then I'm going to share with you my thoughts on Roe versus Wade. And then if anyone wants to come on and join who is part of this, I'll probably be on here till at least about out there. I can't necessarily compete with those guys. I think Steven Crowder's doing stuff. I know it's a really good broadcast, and I would kind of want to take in some of it too and do some prayer. But I know this doesn't ultimately end Roe versus Wade. it basically is I guess it would be a 50-year detour, more or less, whereas in 73 to where we are now. So basically has, I guess, 47 years, of nothing. I would like to see it overturned nationally and federally, because I think it should be terminated federally, because it's murder. Quite frankly, I think abortion is murder. I think the laws in the books in all 50 states and DC, even though you might not think so in DC, the way the crime is in DC, that murder is illegal. You can't murder somebody. And I think it comes down to understanding, when does human life begin? And that's where the core argument starts. And there's a debate there, but at least that debate is a real debate. It's not like, an arbitrary thing, a clump of cells. We're all clumps of cells. I don't buy the argument that we're all that you're not viable after birth, because you're not viable stark naked on the moon either. You're not viable at 2 years old, because you need someone to take care of you. You're not viable crossing the birthing canal or coming through a C-section. It's not a magic line that gets crossed there. You're still a human being. You're a human being before you crossed it. You're a being after you crossed it. So I don't buy any of those arguments. I don't buy the argument that they don't have a conscience, that they aren't sentient, because if you're in a coma, and if you have a car accident, you're in a coma, you're 20 years old, no one has, right? And so the argument there would be, well, maybe we can pull the plug, but pulling the plug is something that you do naturally. It's not cutting the person's head off. It's not something that's unnatural in terms of the act of ending the life. So I don't buy any of those arguments whatsoever. None of them are valid. Rape or incest, kill the rapist or the incest person, or the rapist, kill the rapist. Okay, the baby's life, it's not their fault that mom got violated. As horrible as it is, it's a horrible thing, and there need to be things in place, conversations in place to help those people. But I don't think murdering a kid is the answer, even psychologically for the mother. So I don't buy. There's no argument right whatsoever that I can buy into for abortion. I think it plays into the same hands of slavery, the antebellum period. The same arguments that are made for slavery are the same arguments that are made for abortion. The black person is not a human, therefore we can subjugate him. We can do whatever we want with him because he's property. You had the same difference with Roe versus Wade, and same thing with Roe versus Wade and I'm forgetting the course here. I see the guy's face. The case in the 50s, I believe, 1850s, dealing with Dred Scott. Okay, Dred Scott was a free slave, and he moved to a territory he was in a territory that was slave holding, went into a territory of the United States that was a free territory, but then was extradited, and then went to the Supreme Court and said, you're not a human being, so therefore you were never unfree because you were a black person, so therefore you can never be free. So that case is the same case as Roe versus Wade in the essence of a child not being a human being. And so again, all these arguments, I don't fall for those or believe those. And so for me, I think this is a good milestone in our society, but I think it's also not the end all be all. However, bringing something like this to the states, which is what Nicole just mentioned, in terms of making things more federalist or making things more localized to the state of which people live, is what the founding fathers wanted. They wanted autonomy for the states to have the ability to decide for themselves. Because one of the things that people understand is that in the foundations of the Constitution, and even a little bit of the Declaration of Independence, the states wanted autonomy. They didn't want to trade independence from Great Britain for France. In other words, there are people saying we don't want to go to war and have France on our side because we're going to trade King George III for King Louis. No. And so that argument was always going forth. And then when the Constitution was going forward, they literally had to fool the delegates to say, hey, we're just going to talk about the Articles of Confederation. We're not really going to do anything. We're just going to discuss this. We're not going to talk about slavery. We're going to get together. And when they got there, they locked the doors, closed the windows, no media, no press, and said, we're going to do this thing. And then, but once they were there, they felt, okay, let's go ahead and do it. But they had to coerce them because the state representatives of the delegates did not trust the fact that they were going to go to a federal constitution and have to worry about losing the individual autonomy for their individual states. But it happened because of the compromise. Several was the checks and balances, and the other one being the main one was being the split house between the Senate and Congress, being that no matter how big your state is, you will still have 2 representatives in Senate, and no matter how small your state is, I said it wrong. No matter how big or small your state is, you get 2, and no matter how big your population is, you still get representation based on the population because that's something that's merited. And so, and that's the one compromise that really brought that whole thing forward. So, getting ahead of myself, I'm gonna look at some more comments here and see what we have. Mark said this has no business being in Title IX. Yes, I 100% agree. Talking about the whole thing with women's sports. Let's go down to Lori here. Yeah, incredible. I mean, what is gas now where you are? Right now, it's about $4.59 where I am. When I went to South Carolina, it was about 30 cents cheaper. But yeah, everywhere it's really high. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's a special thing being adopted, and for many years I didn't even talk about that for many reasons, because I didn't want, number one, I didn't want to make my parents feel bad. That's what I thought. But at the same time, I was like, well, a little bit embarrassed too, because everyone else had their legitimate parents or their biological parents, and I thought that was kind of a weird thing. But as I get older and have kids and see what's going on, and especially now, I really appreciate and understand how fortunate and how blessed I am to be that, because I could have been anywhere, and it's just incredible. So yeah, Mark, I 100% I'm with you on that. No, it's fine. So risk of stepping on your story. There's a reason. There's a pawn shop with firearms, Planned Parenthood, a liquor store, and KFC of the 4 corners of your neighborhood. And you know what's interesting? I don't want to get into a long story here. I'll do this eventually. But when I was in college, I grew up and worked in DC area. I grew up in PG County, Maryland. My parents had a business in DC, a very successful business in DC. It was a transportation facilities management company, and they had a lot of government contracts, limousine services, all kinds of stuff with various departments. So I got a chance to go all over DC, meet various people as a page, more or less, or a worker within a mailroom. I worked in the mailroom of Federal Trade Commission. I worked as a page at the Housing and Urban Development, and I worked at Bureau of Labor Statistics and Smithsonian. I have a lot of experience just being around DC. And so the point is, driving to and from DC, the people that we went with, we carpooled. A lot of them were the workers who drove for my dad, and they knew the roads very, very well. And I got a chance to see firsthand in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, what you just said there. I'm going to put it back on the screen here. We saw the Planned Parenthood, we saw the liquor stores, we saw all these things, pawn stores, and we saw people outside of these places at 6 o'clock in the morning with drinking alcohol in the morning, and just a state of destitute. And as a college kid, one that changed the world, being part of an African fraternity and having all these aspirations to do things to change the world, I thought, of course, the Republican Party was evil. I also thought that that we had to become more self-actualized and do more for the Black community. And at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that these things were bad. But when I became more conservative down the road, I realized that those things were actually put in place by the Democrats and the liberals, and that they were just put in place to keep a certain sect of people dependent on government so they can continue to get their votes. And that is what really, really pushed me over the edge there. And I think, the abortion question, which to me doesn't make much sense, because why are you going to have that and then limit your voting base at 13% for the past 40 years, because the Black population hasn't really grown at all in about 40 years at 13%. Why would you do that? Why would you continue to do that? I never understood that. So I see Marty's coming on quickly for live. I'm going to let him get settled in. I see him getting ready with his setup. So I'm going to talk a little bit further here and give him a couple more minutes. Marty, when you're ready, just give me the thumbs up. You're ready to go. I'll bring you in. And so I am utterly just rambling. So let's go some more comments here. Let me see. Are you good? Are you good, Marty? Okay, you good. Okay, let's bring Marty in and let's see what he has to say on the subject matter. He's going to do a video for us later. And here we go. Mr. Marty Nailett, how are you?
Hey, Kyle, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing excellently. Better than you can imagine right now.
I am sorry for the delay getting on this. I couldn't wait to be a part of this. Thank you.
Okay, no, well, I'm glad that you guys had time to do it. I know. Do you want to tell us about the video you did yesterday, and are we going to show that, or are we just going to redo it altogether?
Well, when we're done, I really sort of want to go into a totally different direction, because what I talked about on the video yesterday was the Supreme Court rulings on school choice and concealed carry and the importance of them. And what happened today on the Roe versus Wade decision, I think ties in. There's another point. There's another part of what's going on that I think people need to be aware of. It's a good thing. When I was watching earlier or listening earlier, Nicole, you know I'm a big fan of Nicole's, and I love the point that she brought up about Title IX. We're at this moment where some of the people on the left say they can't define what a woman is, but now they're going to redefine Title IX, I guess, to say we don't know what a woman is. But with the wailing and gnashing of teeth going on today on these decisions, I guarantee you they're going to be able to say what a woman is. I guarantee it.
This is comedy hour.
Yes, it is. And Kyle, before I forget, there's another really important point here. You might have brought this up, and if you have, I apologize, but it actually has become public knowledge over the last few years that the Obama administration approached Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire when he was president, so they would be able to replace her. Right. She declined, which of course is her right. Now, of course, she's been replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. If she had been replaced by, say, Merrick Garland, some
yes.
choice of the Obama,
and he was going to be in place. Yeah, he was going to be the guy.
This doesn't happen because, again, one of the things that it's gotten overlooked today, the 6-3 decision was to uphold the Dobbs case, the Mississippi case. The vote to overturn Roe was 5-4. So it's actually that Amy Coney Barrett seat that actually overturned it. And depending on where you come down, that is either delightfully funny or tragic.
Okay, I'm going to give you the floor. Can you just explain to me I didn't realize there were two decisions. I understood Dobbs, but can you explain to me briefly, or the audience, just let's level set here and just kind of bring us back to where we are in terms of the whole thing.
Yeah,
I'm jump off. Go ahead.
No problem. The court ruled on two different cases, and the initial case, and it was reported this way, that it was 6-3 to overturn it, but that was to uphold the Dobbs case. There was a center in Mississippi that had filed suit because they had put in restrictions on when they would provide or when you could get an abortion. The Supreme Court upheld that decision, supported the Mississippi side of that case by a vote of 6-3, which included Chief Justice John Roberts. So John Roberts, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett all voted to uphold that. Now, there was a totally separate ruling that involved Roe, because bringing this case allowed the court to literally have a chance to rule on Roe versus Wade. We probably all know by now that brief of Samuel Alito's was leaked, that he wrote in February. It wasn't leaked until May. And he leaked it, and it seemed to make it apparent that they were going to overturn Roe. They said, among other things, Justice Alito said, among other things, it was egregious law. They manufactured a law. Some of us have believed that. The case was, again, overturning Roe. Roe versus Wade has been overturned by a vote of 5-4. It's important that people understand. There's, of course, a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth going on right now. That does not criminalize abortion. Abortions are still legal. It's up to the state to decide. Now, there's going to be some other things that come down around this, because what happens, and I don't know this, I really don't, I'm waiting to hear this. What happens if a woman who's on Medicaid, which is a state medical system, what happens if a woman who's on Medicaid in Texas goes to California to have an abortion? Who pays for it? Because, a lot of people are already talking about these abortion tourism vacations that go to Chicago, go to New York City, go to California, and have your abortion there. But there's still going to be some gray area there because, like I said, if a woman from Texas, if she's on her private insurance, it's probably not a big deal. If she is on Medicaid, if she's on state insurance in Texas or Florida or Mississippi, what happens if she goes to another state to have an abortion? Remains to be seen. Kyle, I'm sure you've also seen a whole lot of these companies are already saying they will pay for employees to go get an abortion somewhere else. And that really, Kyle, remember a few weeks ago, I did the video on ESG, the social credit ruling for corporations. They're all terrified of it. All these corporations are terrified of it, for better or for worse. I think it's a horrible thing, but it's another decision for another day.
Yeah, your ESG video, it seems like a little bit, not really sexy, but that was there. It's very, very interesting, which is why I'm glad I have you on this platform, because you pick up things that I don't have, I don't know about, and you have more political experience and more gravitas in that area. And I have no problem saying that. I interviewed a woman last night. She's 23 years old. Her name is Michelle. I'm going to do a launch on her interview this week. She's fantastic on policy and all that stuff. And I'm just glad I have people around me that have this information to bring it to bear. Otherwise, you just hear about Black people being victims. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, because it makes me so infuriated. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about LeBron James. That's all I got. But so anyway, I used to be really good at this stuff. I just don't have the time to really dig in. So, but what you just mentioned there, Marty, was incredible. I didn't realize there were 2 cases out there, and the 5-4 decision, and the way you framed it in terms of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Wow, we serve a mighty God. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I agree. Again, when she retired, or when she was asked to retire, they appoint judges for a lifetime. So it is completely up to the judge if he or she retires. I totally get it from a Machiavellian point of view, why the Obama administration would go to her. But remember, the Obama administration and many others thought Hillary Clinton was a lock to win that election in 2016. The danger there was the Republican Senate. And Kyle, I brought this up a few times. I know you've talked about it. For whatever, like it or not, most of us on the conservative side have been very critical at times of Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and a few others. Those justices only got there because of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and a few others. They're the ones who put them there. And you probably recall Kavanaugh in particular. It would have been real easy to walk away from Kavanaugh. There was, the left was running a terror campaign. We talk about insurrections. Have people forgotten what the Capitol looked like during the Kavanaugh confirmation, with people screaming, banging on doors, charging into the theaters and things like that? It would have been real easy for a lot of senators to walk away. But on Gorsuch was really pretty easy. Trump was kind of in a grace period. And remember, Justice Gorsuch was replacing Scalia. So a lot of people on the left said, well, he's a conservative, they're replacing a conservative. We'll fight when it comes to Kennedy and others. Kavanaugh replaced Kennedy. I'm not completely sold on Justice Kavanaugh as a conservative, although of course I love what he did here. But he's definitely more conservative than Kennedy was. And there couldn't be a bigger difference politically than Amy Coney Barrett and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They could not be further apart. I'm not hearing you, Kyle. I'm sorry.
When I'm moving my microphone around, I muted, so I don't want you guys' feedback. So I'm going to talk 3 things here. Kavanaugh, I'm going to talk about McConnell and Mitch and Graham. So as much as I like to talk about Graham and talk about Mitch McConnell, as bad as they are, they still, without their own knowing, did this country a huge service. And they may have been small in light of everything else they're doing to destroy this country with this gun law that just kicked past, whatever. But I get emotional about watching this. When Graham went to bat for Kavanaugh and was nearly in tears, that was the moment that the Kavanaugh thing was done. It was over. When Graham spoke, there was no more debate anymore. It was a done deal because he came to bat for him, and it was an amazing thing. And we're seeing benefits from that today. All right. So everything else Graham does, I don't care. But that right there was my Hall of Fame moment in his career. Now, Mitch McConnell, as bad as he is, he locked down the Senate the House I guess what's the Senate? It's Senate, yeah. In terms of making those justices go into work and vote because they were in session. He said, "Look, if you're not in session, we're going to make sure we vote on all these judges coming into these different courts, appellate courts and district courts, everything else." He put so many judges in place that even the Ninth District ruled in our favor a couple of times this past year. And so, and they vote on these, they pick up by random essentially. And the more you have, the better chance of having a ruling in your favor. They pick 3 out of however many. And so he did that. So those 2 things, I think, really helping us out right now in terms of what's going on legislatively across the country. And lastly, I mentioned one more thing I forgot. Kavanaugh. So, and here's the thing about Kavanaugh. And I think I got this from, what's the guy's name? I did the movies. Janessa D'Souza. He said, a lesson we can learn from Justice Thomas is that they went after him in 88, or actually 92, and he never forgot that. And it's been giving them hell ever since. The problem is, why isn't Kavanaugh doing the same thing? They took him to task, and he's, to your point, is like kind of wavering on this conservatism. So do you think he'll harden up, or do you think he'll figure it out, especially after trying to assassinate him this past week?
I don't know. I think if you look at his history, in my opinion, Justice Kavanaugh was never really that conservative. He's conservative, don't get me wrong, but he's not Gorsuch or certainly Clarence Thomas or Samuel Alito. So only time will tell. Kyle, I want to add one other name that gets forgotten with the Kavanaugh hearings, and she is probably cursing it today, but Susan Collins, the pro-abortion Republican senator from Maine. Yeah. Don't forget, when the Kavanaugh hearing was going on, Susan Collins stepped in and gave a very impassioned speech, not about his beliefs, but about the process. And you could argue really persuasively that it was her speech that allowed the process. Again, she didn't support him, but she allowed the process to move forward. Now, today, who knows? She's probably kicking herself, and others are, creating little voodoo dolls for her, sticking pins in them. But she was very important during the Kavanaugh hearing, because remember, when all this stuff came up, all these false, now we know were false accusations, they actually put the thing off at the behest of people like Mitt Romney. They delayed the hearing, they delayed the vote for a week so they could investigate some of these just ridiculous claims. But while that was going on, it wasn't Mitt Romney that stepped in and was the voice of reason. It was Senator Susan Collins from Maine.
I do remember that now. I didn't realize that speech she gave kept the process going. I just remember I guess because the Graham one was so much more emotional. It had more. Sure. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Susan Collins, remember, again, she's been historically pro-abortion. She was also up for re-election last year. So there were people sort of circling that and dancing around that. And it would have been really easy for her to just keep her mouth shut and, do what she's always done. And I've never been a big fan of hers politically, but from a personal point of view, her moment, I totally agree with you on Lindsey Graham as well, but Susan Collins, in terms of her standing up and saying, this is how the Senate works, and this is what we're going to do, I applaud her for that. And she probably hates it today, but Kavanaugh wouldn't have been, well, he probably still would have been, confirmed. But it was a tense moment in that process.
You mentioned that's how the Senate works. Let's talk about how the Supreme Court works. Mark just talked about this here. I'm sorry, the question was asked here from Rick. It says, did you watch Nancy Pelosi? And by the way, Mark, I'm going to get back to the Smithsonian comment in a little bit here. Did you watch the Nancy Pelosi said response? And said that basically that they accused Trump of packing the courts.
So what? Well, I mean, that's one of the things you elect when you elect a president. You want the president to pack the court. As a conservative, I am pleasantly surprised by President Trump's judicial picks. I didn't expect him. I expected a bunch of Anthony Kennedys, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And we didn't get that. So he packed the court. So what? Hillary Clinton would have done the same thing. President Obama would have done the same thing. Bernie Sanders, whoever. That's one of the reasons you vote for a president, in the hope that he or she will be able to pack the court. That's part of the process. That's the same thing with the Senate. It's why the Senate is also important.
Well, go look at Andrew Jackson. He had about 3 appointees, I believe, and those appointees, I know this because I did a video a few years ago. I know, and so these appointees, guess what? They actually were instrumental in the Dred Scott case.
Yeah.
So so these things really are important. So, and the people that dissented in the Dred Scott case were the Republicans. I think it was I'm not sure. I mean, they had that. Maybe it was 7 back then. It was a 5-2, I believe. 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
On Dred Scott?
I believe so. I believe that's
yeah.
correct. And I think 3 of those were Andrew appointees. So
yeah, that's what you're voting for when you vote for a president and or a senator. That a lot of people we've dumbed down America so much that people don't really realize how everything works, what a senator does. There's Kyle, with these 3 recent hearings or decisions that have been handed down, I hope people understand that some of the verbiage in it really opens the doors as far as insight into the court's thinking. And I saw someone on Twitter bringing up a point this morning that there's never been a better time to attack the Federal Reserve Act than right now with this SCOTUS. So it opens up a lot of possibilities because, again, all this Roe ruling, it doesn't criminalize abortion. Now, you and I are abolitionists. I think it's murder. I think the federal government should be in the business of saying we don't murder anybody and we're going to protect everybody. But that's not what happened here. So it returns it to the states. The school choice ruling in some ways does the same thing. And so if we are going to have this process now moving forward, it's really an opportunity to defang the monster that this government has become. Because you look at these cases, when it comes to abortion, the only role a government should have is to protect the life of the unborn. That's not what they've done. When it comes to concealed carry, the only role the federal government should have is to make sure that you're always able to buy a firearm. That's the only business they have in it. And when it comes to school choice, they literally have no role in it, but we've created one for them. And these 3 cases in particular really open the doors for this, like I said, this insight into how the court is thinking. And it is an opportunity to move other things forward. Now, the bad side of that, you know as well as I do, that when Nancy Pelosi talks about packing the court, that's what she wants to do now.
Yeah.
When someone explains to Joe Biden what really happened here, which is going to have to happen, that's what they'll put in his ear, that it's time to pack the court. Yes. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And what's frustrating to me, and I'm sure for you and many conservatives, is this isn't what we want out of life.
Right.
The government is really supposed to do a couple of things and stay the heck out of our way. But it's just turned into this unending battle that none of us really wants to fight, but we have to.
I'm gonna send you a link to the raw interview, unedited, that I did last night with Michelle, because she talks a lot about this stuff. It's pretty wonky. If you want to listen to it, you can. The review will be out next week, but there's some things we redact because we don't want the public to see some things we said.
Sure, yeah, I understand.
It got kind of colorful, on my part, by the way, not hers. But anyway, yeah. So because the reason I'm saying is because she mentioned about how the government, the government is pretty much supposed to be out of our way, and they're not supposed to prevent things that we might do. It's like we're not going to legislate. Yeah, and so I thought that was a really good statement that she made last night.
That's of course the big problem with red flag laws. You're criminalizing someone for what you think they might do or what an enraged ex-spouse or ex-partner might say they're going to do. And the Supreme Court in the not too distant past has already ruled against a version of red flag laws. So, I think it's almost like a terror campaign by our government. They'll just keep throwing stuff at you, throwing stuff at you. And the hope that eventually you, me, younger people You get tired of fighting.
Exactly.
You want to raise your kids. You want to run your business. You want to do those things. And it's become so cumbersome to try to do that in America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to go to this answer here to Mark. Mark, it was the Castle building on the mall right there where the carousel is. I have a funny story about Bryant Gumbel there. But basically, USA Today did a showing there one morning all day, and I guess the Today Show. And I got on national TV a couple of times by going back and forth from my office to the thing. But anyway, yeah, it was this Smithsonian, the Castle building. Got a chance to see a lot of cool things in that building. So yeah, much effort, stigma, people to try. I think we talked that up there. Some new comments here. Rick's on. Keep going, guys. This is this. Okay. Yeah. See here, New York ruling today wrote, Dems are too stupid to realize that there's one constitutional. Yeah, exactly. Are you aware of the one that Epoch Times mentioned 2 days ago, where it's essentially that the Supreme Court may take up a hearing where it deals with the state legislation's ability to govern their own elections, including redistricting and the just the election process in general. Basically, what the Supreme Court, what the Constitution actually said in kind of loose terms, and it's been argued, but basically that the states legislations have the plenary authority in terms of governing elections.
Yes, and this is the benefit or the potential benefit of that you could read into these last couple of rulings. That's exactly one, because one of the things I brought up in a recent video, a lot of people don't realize this, but there are over 600 federal agencies in America. 600. There are 19 different intelligence gathering agencies in America. Now, what if all 600 of them were turned against you personally or me personally? Because that's what the Biden regime is trying to do. They are trying to use those different agencies to influence coming elections. They want to federalize, nationalize, whatever you want to call them. They want to federalize every elections, and there are very few roles constitutionally that the federal government has when it comes to our elections. I think that is a potential next battleground. And again, just going back to what I was saying, it's a battle that we have to fight. I'm tired of it. I'm a lot older than you, and we've been fighting this for a long time. Every year it gets worse and worse and worse. Kyle, you're a parent. When you're a grandparent, you want your kids, your grandchildren, to have more than you, to have better than you. That's really what you want. And what we're turning over to our kids is, you know what, you're going to have to fight every day of your life in areas you shouldn't have to fight. It's like some of these things we're talking about. And what you just brought up, that I think you're going to see the SCOTUS, I think you're going to see them take up some election issues here soon, because I believe what the Biden regime wants to do is dump everything on us right before the midterms. Because they have all these ideas and all these goals that they won't tell anybody about. Molly Hemingway from the Federalist had a really good article about it. She does great work, and she had a really good article about it, that there's politicians, there's journalists, there's all kinds of people going to the administration and saying, what are you guys doing? What are you planning on doing? They won't tell anybody. They literally won't tell anybody. And what we do know is they are using all 600 plus federal agents to change the way people view elections, to change people's access to elections and things like that. Of course, they're going to say they want to make it for the better, but it's skeptical. And I think, in my opinion, we're already the end of June here. The elections aren't that far off. I think you're going to see a lot of this stuff come out right before the election, and it's going to be too late to do anything about it. Kyle, I don't mean to just ramble on, but one other thing we haven't brought up, SCOTUS also ruled on the North Carolina voter ID law. They ruled 8-1 in favor of it. So,
okay, can I jump in real quick and get kind of premise that, because I live in North Carolina, and then can I let you take that?
Yeah.
So I've been heavily involved in and by the way, Rick, you're right about FDR, and that whole thing there is incredible. FDR, I think, was one of the worst presidents of all time because I won't get FDR, but whatever, sorry. Right. But in North Carolina, so being actively involved in the whole voters' right thing, we had the whole thing locked. We had the majority in both the House and the Senate, and I believe at the time we even had I think McCrory was the governor, passed that, I believe, and then they went to the courts, and then the court said, you know what, we can't have that, and then that was it. So go on with your with what happened with the 8-1 decision.
No problem. That North Carolina voter ID law, which is a really simple law, really, they put it in front of SCOTUS. And again, I want to point to it was an 8-1 vote. This wasn't a razor thin margin. This was an easy call. And there was one in Wisconsin a few years ago, too, a voter ID law that SCOTUS upheld. And it's really reaching the point where literally every state in the country has to address that. And you've got these guidelines from the Supreme Court. Now, what the Supreme Court ruled in this case was that the legislature in North Carolina could defend it and could take the steps they needed to take on it. They didn't really say this is a good law or a bad law, but they have in the past ruled in favor of voter ID laws. It's really simple. It's insulting to say that people can't get an ID. Kyle, if you think about in the course of a day, how many times you have to show or demonstrate that you have real ID in America, it's insulting to say that people can't do it to vote. It's insulting. Losing you again.
I said, then you had the NAACP coming out and talking to you and telling you, brother man, where's your ID? Every black person I know has an ID.
Yeah.
Everyone, even the ones who are against the man because they don't want to be caught out alone because a cop may want to know. So even the ones who are radical on the left have an ID because they're fearful that they might get pulled over. So don't give me this. And then not to mention, it's going to be free anyway. It's going to, they're going to provide it. And so it's an insulting thing. And you see, don't get me started on that whole thing. It's their talking point. That's the only thing they have. It makes no logical sense, but they push out there and the narrative goes forward because people don't want to think for themselves. And they say, well, whatever. And that's it.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And some journalist a couple of years ago went to a heavily urban area of a city and interviewed people on the streets about ID. Do you have an ID on you? Yeah, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? And people were saying, well, I just bought cigarettes. I need to show an ID to buy cigarettes. I just went to a pharmacy. I had to show ID to pick up a prescription. It wasn't opioids, really not much to it as a prescription goes, but I had to show ID in order to pick it up. So it's another battle that we have to fight, but I don't know. I don't know if there's an end to these battles, to be honest with you.
No, because they're determined. One thing I miss about Rush Limbaugh so much is that he would basically set what's going to happen, and then you just watch it transpire.
Sure.
And and just like McConnell and those guys, you never. And I like your video talking about we can't give an inch on the Second Amendment. Sure. And McConnell and Kavanaugh, those guys, not Kavanaugh, McConnell and the rest of the rhinos, acquiescing and giving up to this gun control. Because I don't know, they try to play nice. I mean, they think if Rush should say, do not be nice to these guys because they don't like you. They're just going to use you. So you might as well just hold your ground and then fight the fight instead of trying to think they're going to like you later. They're not going to like you later.
You're absolutely right. Of course, Limbaugh was absolutely right in that as well. They don't just dislike you and me. They hate us. They absolutely despise us. They despise everything that we are, that we stand for. And when you realize that, it's kind of liberating, right? My enemy hates me. Good. Now, I don't have to hate him back, but I have to realize that my enemy hates me and wants me to be poor, miserable, in harm's way, and unable to defend myself. And I have to realize that's what my enemy wants. If they weren't my enemy, they wouldn't want that.
Sure.
Kyle, this red flag law that is just going through the Senate, I think Dan Bongino was talking about this. It's 25 pages before guns are even mentioned. And one of the things it says that you have to eliminate? Body armor. You have to eliminate. Now, why would you have to eliminate body armor? If you're worried about getting people people that get shot, that should really be this incredible thing that we want everybody to have. There's a company that produces non-lethal defense systems, and they actually have a backpack that converts into body armor. You pull it over your head and you've got body armor. It's really a neat thing, but things like that are part of this red flag bill. Why would you do that? It has nothing to do with attacking anybody.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And you're right. I like what you said, how you framed the argument. Why, if they're not your enemy, why would they ask for these things?
Sure.
That's a really good way of looking at it. And that's like poof, mind blown there. But you're absolutely correct. Mark says, why don't we just lock the number at 9? And number one, I left it up here because people do not want to stack the court. That's an issue that's like a 60-40 issue that people don't want to do that. So I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But, the whole thing with the Supreme Court, they shouldn't even be instituting policies to begin with. This should be stopped, and you know this. This should be stopped at legislative level, and the government should have nothing to do. Back in the day, the way government grew was because of the spoils system, and essentially they were handing off favors to and from. It's basically started with Andrew Jackson, and slowly but surely, you help me out, I'll give you a general postmaster's position, I'll give you something else, whatever, and then these people had to have more and more positions. So they had to have more roles for them because they're giving these favors, these political positions. And eventually you build a swamp. And then once Lincoln comes around, you have Civil War. And then at that point, the Republicans had a chance to totally rewrite that, because for the next 20 years, Democrats couldn't do anything. If you look at the presidency after Johnson, there was no Democrats for a long time because they were the party that killed Lincoln. But guess what happened? Corruption got in, a budget system went in, a swamp within the Republican Party went in. They compromised and let them come in and remove the federal presence from the South to allow the Klan to go roughshod. And then you had Wilson come in there from that point on, and you had a Democrat majority because the Republicans became corrupt. So it's really interesting how these things happen. And knowing history is really a way of seeing how to prevent it in the future.
Well, yes. And when you mention Wilson, President Wilson, there are some things that happened that kind of fly beneath the radar that I don't even know what the percentage would be. But if you asked 100 college students about the 17th Amendment, what's the 17th? The 17th Amendment and the 16th. 16th created the taxation system, and the 17th changed the way U.S. senators were elected. So many people in America don't realize that the U.S. senators were never to be elected by popular vote. Never. They were elected by the state legislatures. And the reason was they were there to control business between the states and the federal government. We've completely lost sight of that. One of the things that would have to happen when people talk about reclaiming America or things like that, you would have to repeal the 17th Amendment. I think you'd have to repeal the 16th too, and have a system where there's no such thing as the federal government should never be able to reach into my pocket. Set up a system where the federal government gives the states a bill, and the states decide how or if they're going to pay it. Let my state say, I lived in Colorado for years. So much of the revenue there comes from tourism. That's not true of every state, but let each state decide how they're going to reach into their people's pocket. We would have to repeal the 17th Amendment, and that'll never happen. But Kyle, think about this for a second. You have, I want to say, anywhere from 23 to 27 Republicans, sometimes super majorities in states. So use a figure of, 27. You would have in those states, you'd have a lock for two Republican senators from each state, or two conservative senators. And it's not a party thing. People who know me, Kyle, know that I quit the Republican Party in disgust in 1995. I went back to vote for Donald Trump in a primary, but I had quit the Republican Party because you talk about their corruption, they've got a history of it too. Mm-hmm. And we see some of it today. But I don't want to go down this rabbit hole on it, but we would have to change in America things like the 17th Amendment, the 16th Amendment. The 17th Amendment is a big one. U.S. senators should never be elected by popular vote. Shouldn't happen.
You know what? That's probably I don't know anything about 16 to 17. I'm glad you brought that up because I do know about the founding of this country and the compromise that it had to make. I mentioned it in my monologue. There is that the Constitutional Convention did not want to have states lose their autonomy, and they never would have gone for a split house, upper lower, if the upper was a national, not national, but a popular vote of the entire state.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, they wouldn't have gone. They wouldn't have gone for that because right now, if you look at it, the state legislator has no responsibility whatsoever in terms of the overall arching scheme of our federal government. Only within elections, within those two clauses. But had they had the Senate, they would have had an enormous role in the federal government as a check against the federal government, against the people. It says there's always a check in our constitutional system. Supreme Court, all three are checked against each other in a fascinating, brilliant way.
Exactly. And again, just as we've been talking, even the split in the legislature, House of Representatives, that's who has the checkbook, so to speak. So they're the ones that are closest to you. They're the ones that are up for election every 2 years that you vote for. Senate is different. They were designed to, kind of arbitrate between the federal and the state government. They weren't going to be that busy. So, it's frustrating, but yeah, you're totally right on that history, I think. And it's frustrating because some of those things have to happen to see things turn around. Without them, if we continue to allow a system where the federal government can reach into your pocket, reach into my pocket, we're doomed. If we continue to elect senators by popular vote, it's a slower path, but we're just as doomed.
Okay, I know you a lot of stuff going on, Marty. I appreciate you coming on, and I know you got to prep for another video coming that you're going to do for us. But can you just close this out? I'll let you close this out the whole way, and I'll leave, and you can just before I do that, let me just at least thank everyone who came on here first, and I think I got all the questions here. Lori, Mark, of course, as always, and by the way, Mark, Marty, I'm going to invite him to our Signal group as a contributor. I think he has a lot to offer. I think he could help us out in some ways, just as nothing moral support, nothing else, and jokes. So, Rick, thank you so much for coming on. Okay, that's pretty much. So can you just frame it the reverse way? What does it mean to you? And I'll let you close out and the whole thing. And by the way, thank everyone else for coming to Conservative Take. Marty, take it away.
Yep, that will do. Again, the Supreme Court rulings that were released today, 2 of them, the court sided with the Dobbs Center in Mississippi by a vote of 6-3. They sided with overturning Roe versus Wade by a vote of 5-4. Again, I'm an abolitionist. I think it should be criminal everywhere in this country. It's not. With that in mind, it's still a good law. This is still going to save lives. There's a lot of stuff to come from it yet. And again, with these decisions and the 2 others that Kyle and I talked about, there's a whole lot more still coming as far as how they're implemented and side effects from them. So I'll leave it right there. Kyle, thanks as always for letting me be a part of this. And everyone that's watching, thanks as always for supporting the Conservative Take platform. Thanks.